Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings, look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. But instead, what House Republicans and the Trump-Musk administration want to do is they want to look into your kids' lunch money, your kids' teacher's salary, into your grandparents' Social Security. They want to take that money and give it out in billionaire tax cuts, and they're talking about that in committee tomorrow. I'm going to do something that I've never done in a congressional hearing before, and that is plead for help from the American people, plead for help from my Republican colleagues on something that we actually all agree on, because lives are at stake right now. I'll ask you, Mr. Kerkorian, and I know you're a Project 2025 board member, your recent quote from a few years ago where you said, quote, Haiti is so screwed up because it wasn't colonized long enough, end quote. Is that correct? Did you say that?
I'm happy to talk about that all you want.
You did say it, that's right?
I wrote it, yes.
You said that. Haiti was colonized as a slave plantation colony. The French colonized Haiti so that slaves would work on plantations. The end of colonization in Haiti was so that the people there would no longer be slaves. So what you're saying, and I read your quote, and anybody watching this online should go read it. What you're saying is it would have been good if they'd stayed colonized, which means that it would have been good if they had stayed enslaved by the French.
In the long run, it's one of the
in the long run,
history. No,
people shouldn't have been enslaved a single day. I'm reclaiming my time, Chairman.
And they had every right. They had every right to throw the.
What
French
you said
out.
is that
My
you would have
point
wanted
is,
them. Reclaiming my time. I'm talking now.
They would have been free
you
30
said
years later,
you said,
and they would have been in the same situation.
You're saying you wanted 30 more years of slavery in Haiti. Reclaiming my time.
Not. I did
you
not.
just said it. Honestly,
want that.
it adds up. You said that they would have benefited from the French influence.
In
the French
long
were
run,
the ones.
like the people in Martinique and
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Chairman. I'd like my time back. Please,
enslaved.
my time. This is my time, Mr. Kerkorian.
They are much better off.
Honestly,
now
this
than
all
Haiti
starts
was.
to add up. This all starts to add up. You continue to do this, disseminate writings of white nationalists, try to rationalize, for example, Haiti being colonized for 30 more years. You're a Project 2025 board member. In Project 2025, I couldn't figure out why on page 583, it advocates for not allowing racial disparity or gender disparity to be considered discrimination legally anymore. In Project 2025, it eliminates a 50-year-old executive order that prohibits discrimination in federal jobs. On page 586, Project 2025 advocates for Donald Trump to allow businesses to discriminate based on religious beliefs. Before today, I couldn't understand why Trump's Project 2025 could advocate for ending civil rights protections. Why would Trump's Project 2025, I know there's crazy stuff in here, but I couldn't get why it would advocate for ending protections against discrimination. But now I understand. We have Project 2025 board members here who are the directors of groups that the Southern Poverty Law Center has designated as a hate group. We have people that are on the board that developed this who have said, for example, that Haitians would have been better off with more influence from their enslavers. Let me be clear. The right wing and these so-called Trump border policies have nothing to do with keeping people safe. This is about ripping families apart, arresting immigrants, and blaming someone for our problems so we can ignore the fact that Trump and these right-wing officials are grifters and that Trump is taking millions of dollars from foreign governments to enrich himself. His main policy achievement had nothing to do with the border or migration, but cutting taxes for the rich and the biggest corporations in this country. All the while, the collateral damage is kids being separated from their moms, people in cages, which we can't deny. Mr. Holman sitting here before us said at the CPAC convention, and I quote, he doesn't give a about that. And desperate people living in the shadows,
that is
undocumented.
A lie. You just said something that wasn't true.
Mr. Chairman, would you please stop the witness from interrupting our members?
I like to deal in truth, and here's the truth about SNAP.
SNAP was intended to give hardworking Americans a second chance during difficult stretches in life. It was never intended to become a lifestyle, but rather a life vest. And in spite of this, the program has shifted from its original intentions and has continually grown. It now represents some 82% of the Farm Bill and will cost $1.2 trillion over 10 years. The truth is, SNAP has been plagued by overpayments and errors. SNAP's national overpayment rate is 9.84%, leading to more than 34 million in erroneous payments each day, $13.15 billion a year. This isn't really even factoring in the overpayments of less than $48, which is not factored in. Look, this is all aided by sugary drinks, which are the second most purchased items sold through SNAP, accounting for 5% of dollars SNAP recipients spend on food, costing between $2 and $4 billion each year. The truth is, as the number of SNAP recipients has grown, our healthiness levels have fallen here in America. I think that's shameful. This shows a definite need for changes to SNAP, to ensure solvency in the program, to curb the waste, the fraud, the abuse, to incentivize healthier choices, and to rein in our skyrocketing national debt of almost $35 trillion.
My distinguished colleagues on the other side of the aisle have mentioned overpayment when they are talking about food stamps and SNAP benefits, when really we should be asking about overpayment to many of these corporate CEOs. When folks have been talking about waste, fraud, or abuse and are talking about people who are just trying to get by and on food stamps, I would actually point to the waste, fraud, and abuse of corporate America, who are overwhelmingly starting to dominate our food systems and jacking up prices on consumers while underpaying their workers. Just take a look at the beef market, where we have 4 packing companies that now control 85% of the market. Those same companies that have been caught with children working in dangerous facilities are constantly underpaying their workers and have used their market power to not only ignore those basic labor laws, but to jack up prices on consumers.
The Equal Representation Act, passed out of this committee and by the House earlier this year, is critical to ensuring fairness in our electoral process. This legislation adds a straightforward citizenship question to the decennial census questionnaire to ensure accurate information. It also ensures that only U.S. citizens are counted for apportionment of congressional seats and electoral college votes. American citizens' federal representation should be determined by American citizens only. We must get this bill passed by Congress and signed into law.
I couldn't disagree more with this really kind of wild Republican idea of the so-called, quote-unquote, Equal Representation Act, which would only count certain people in this country in complete violation of the 14th Amendment, again, a post-Civil War amendment. I don't know anybody here that wants to go back to sort of pre-Civil War times or a pre-Civil War Constitution. My office, just like every office here, when somebody calls, you don't ask, hey, are you a citizen? You ask, are you a constituent? How can I help you? We need every single person counted. And in fact, if there is a citizenship question on the census, we then would be admitting that we want to undercount people, because all the data points to the idea that this undercounts people. And the point of the census is to follow the Constitution and count the number of people. It's not to figure out who's a citizen or a non-citizen. It's to find out by the Constitution how many people live in each state. Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, received a staggering $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for his brand new private equity firm. And while Hunter Biden never had any say over U.S. policy, Mr. Kushner got this $2 billion 6 months after working in the White House as a senior advisor on Middle East policy. Mr. Kushner had no experience in private equity. In fact, he was so inexperienced that Saudi officials tried to block the transfer of the money until the Crown Prince overruled them. While working at the White House, Mr. Kushner pushed through a $110 billion weapons sale for Saudi Arabia. I'm finishing my point and then I'm happy to talk about it. He then defended the deal in the wake of the Saudi government's murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And while this may all just be a coincidence, there's many questions. Like, was any of this money passed along to Trump? Was the Saudi money a thank you for a job well done in the White House? Was Jared given this money in exchange for anything else? Or did someone with no experience just have a lucky payday? These are questions we should have answers to. I'm going to start by describing the facts on the ground. Millions of people are at risk of dying of starvation in areas of the world where Democrats and Republicans have already agreed and committed to feeding them with American-grown food for humanitarian reasons and for global stability. But yesterday, I spoke with people in charge of warehouses in Sudan and Ethiopia, warehouses full of food, but because of DOGE, that food is trapped in the warehouse out of reach of starving and dying moms and kids. In those two countries alone, 150,000 children and moms are at risk of dying this month if that food is not delivered from the warehouse to them right up the road. Everyone agrees that's not supposed to happen. Republicans voted for this food, and Democrats voted for this food to get out. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the food should go out as part of his life-saving waiver. DOGE Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene started this hearing by saying that life-saving food programs should still be running. We have paid for the food, and we have shipped it, and it is sitting trapped in the warehouse because DOGE is blocking the payments needed to get the food out to the people who need it. So here's what that means. It means that kids are dying, and more will die tomorrow, of severe acute malnutrition. If you want nightmares, just Google severe acute malnutrition and look at the photos. The way that healthcare workers determine if a kid is dying of this is they measure their bicep. And if their bicep is less than 4.5 inches around, then that means you could die of starvation tomorrow. Think of a kid's arm fitting through this hole. Think of your kid's arm fitting through this hole. These kids could die tomorrow. You've heard today about the waiver for life-saving humanitarian assistance, and all I'm asking is for Rubio's waiver to be made real. People watching at home, you can do something about this. I know many of these hearings are live on Fox News. I'm a Democrat. For many of the people watching, you may not agree with me on many issues, but I think we can all agree that this food needs to get out of the warehouse and to these kids. I've gotten phone calls from conservative friends, people of faith that moved to Africa to live out their faith of I was naked and you clothed me, I was hungry and you fed me, and they agree that this food should be given out. So call your Republican congressperson, call the White House, tell them you know they didn't mean to do this, but that this food needs to go out tomorrow. If you're in the press, cover this story. Ask questions about Ethiopia. Ask questions about Sudan. Tell the world about this. Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings, look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. But instead, what House Republicans and the Trump-Musk administration want to do is they want to look into your kids' lunch money, your kids' teacher's salary, into your grandparents' Social Security. They want to take that money and give it out in billionaire tax cuts, and they are talking about that in committee tomorrow. Generals who are supposed to be looking into waste, fraud, and abuse. Mr. Talcove, do you know how many inspector generals at agencies that were investigating Elon Musk's companies have been fired by the Trump-Musk administration?
No.
It is 5. Ms. Royal, the Inspector General of the Department of Labor had 17 open investigations into Tesla and SpaceX. Do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
No.
They fired him, and I think y'all know. Mr. Whitson, The Inspector General of the Department of Transportation was investigating Tesla. Do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
No.
They were fired. The Department of Defense's Inspector General was looking into SpaceX. Mr. Hedler, do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
I believe he was fired.
Thank you. I think everybody on the panel knows what the answer to these questions were. The U.S. Department of Agriculture Inspector General was investigating Musk's Neuralink. Mr. Talcove, now I'll ask you again under oath, do you know what Mr. Trump did to that Inspector General that was looking into one of Musk's companies?
No.
He was fired. The Inspector General at the EPA was repeatedly taking on Tesla. Mr. Hedler, since it seems that you're answering the questions that everyone knows the answer to, do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
I believe he was also fired.
Also fired. At least 5 Inspector Generals that were looking into Elon Musk's companies were fired by the Trump-Musk administration. These Inspector Generals, who are independent, protected by law, they are the people that find the waste, fraud, and abuse and found many of the cases of waste, fraud, and abuse that have been brought up today, fired because they were looking into Elon Musk. At the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, which is supposed to protect workers from getting their unions busted by folks like Elon Musk, made functionally broken by the so-called Department of Government Efficiency that really is the Department of Government Efficiency for Elon Musk, not for you. They are trying to shut down the Department of Education, the Department of Labor. You know what Elon Musk doesn't seem to be looking into? His own contracts. Again, I'll ask you, Mr. Talcove, do you know how much money a day Mr. Musk will receive from the federal government for his contracts?
No.
The answer is $8 million a day. Just last year, Elon Musk was promised $3 billion from close to 100 contracts with the federal government. Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings, look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. But instead, what House Republicans and the Trump-Musk administration want to do is they want to look into your kids' lunch money, your kids' teacher's salary, into your grandparents' Social Security. They want to take that money and give it out in billionaire tax cuts, and they are talking about that in committee tomorrow. In Budget Committee tomorrow, they just released their plan. So let me be clear. When Republicans talk about government efficiency in this Congress, they're not looking into billionaires who don't pay their taxes. They're not looking into billionaires who get rich off of government contracts. They're not looking into Elon Musk firing watchdogs who are supposed to keep him accountable. They're looking at cutting your public schools. They're going straight for your Social Security. They're coming straight for cancer research. They're coming straight for the Department of Education. They're not looking at big tech. They're not looking at big pharma because those people fund their campaigns. If this committee were serious about rooting out waste from our federal government, then today's whole hearing would be about how Musk and Donald Trump are firing the independent watchdogs who've done this work for decades. Instead, my Republican colleagues' actual goal on this committee is to distract from Trump and from Musk's corrupt war on accountability. This will not be a subcommittee dedicated to making government efficient for everyday people. It's about helping Elon Musk and Donald Trump be as efficient as possible in robbing our government and handing out our government services to the rich. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Homan, you began as the Trump ICE acting director at the end of January of 2017. Is that correct? I think the date is January 30th, 2017. Does that sound more or less right?
Yes.
And you recall on your first month on the job, Operation Crosscheck, which was a large-scale immigration enforcement action across multiple cities. Do you recall that?
Not specifically, but we did a lot of operations like that.
It was a very significant operation targeting communities in multiple states starting on February 6th, 2017. The ICE officials at the time said this was about going after, and I quote, criminal aliens and making us less safe, but they said that this was about making us more safe. But in my community of Austin, Texas, the majority of people arrested and separated from their families had no criminal conviction at all. Do you recall this?
I don't specifically recall that, but there's no prerequisite in immigration law that says you
I
can't
understand,
commit
but
another crime
you're-
to be arrested for being in the country illegally.
I understand that. Your ICE spokeswoman at the time said that, quote, the purpose of the operation was removing from the streets criminal aliens and other threats to the public. But then a majority of people arrested had no criminal conviction. Does that square up for you?
I don't recall that. I find that
I have another question for you, sir. Are you aware that your chief of staff, when they were asked this question, wrote emails asking agents to come up with, quote, top 3 egregious cases in order to deflect criticism? And if there weren't 3 egregious cases, go include a case from a different city. Are you aware of that?
no, I'm not.
So you're not aware of what your chief of staff was writing?
I don't know every email he writes. No, I don't.
There was an email directly to you from DHS Secretary Kelly asking for this issue to be addressed. Then, in my city of Austin, Texas, ICE officials were told they failed at this task because the egregious case that they wrote up was from before the time of the operation. Do you recall that?
I recall when I was ICE director, we arrested thousands of criminal aliens.
So you
want me to
don't,
answer
you're
about
not
a
answering my
specific
question.
case? I don't
Reclaiming
know
my
what
time.
specific case.
Reclaiming my time. Do you recall that when we were asked whether this had to do with public safety, that then Agent LaRon Bryant said to federal judge Andrew Austin that the reason for these ICE operations was not related to a safety protocol, but instead was a result of the Travis County, where Austin is, new policy that would target criminal enforcement on immigrants rather than deporting non-criminal immigrants. Do you recall this?
No.
So you don't remember that Agent LaRon Bryant said under oath that under you, in your first month as director, that there was a targeted operation at a city because of a policy choice from a local elected official. You don't recall that?
I had 20,000 people under me. I don't recall every
You don't recall this
agent
from your
said.
first month.
No,
I
don't.
understand. While legal pathways to migration remain closed and are getting even more closed, folks here saying they care about sexual assaults by cartels, give me a break. The Republican policies of trying to close legal pathways towards migration is the best blessing that cartels could have ever asked for. By making it harder for people to apply for parole, by making it harder for people to seek asylum, Republican policies are exactly what the cartels would like. Y'all are making the cartels money. Y'all are making the cartels money by trying to slash addiction services, by trying to slash helping people with mental health. Then, yeah, you're helping the cartels. If I was a cartel leader, I would be picking the Republican policies being proposed in H.R. 2 every day of the week. You have people like Governor Abbott saying he would shoot migrants coming across the border if he wouldn't get prosecuted for murder for it. You've got Trump saying immigrants are going to poison the blood of our country. Don't come here and say that you actually care about the safety of those immigrants. If you cared, then we would update our immigration laws for the first time since basically I was born so that people could apply safely and wouldn't have to go to a cartel and wouldn't have to go to a criminal organization. Immigration is a good thing. Immigrants are less likely to commit crime, more likely to start small businesses, help us economically. Sure, the food and the parties are much better with us here, but in our system, we have to open up legal pathways, and let's not say that this is about safety, because every step of the way, your agency lied and said it was about safety while you were separating kids.
Someone's time has expired. To the witnesses, if someone says something that hurts your feelings, just leave it there and don't interrupt the members. Respect their time. The chair now, I recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Mr. Holman, we've heard discussion about using technology to secure the border, but technology really doesn't secure the border. It allows you to see who's coming to the border. And if you've got agents tied up processing people crossing illegally, it really doesn't do anything in terms of interdiction. Is that correct?
Could I respond to the earlier remarks, sir? That was saying I did something that wasn't said at all? I think it's important we set the record straight here. I never said at the CPAC I didn't care about family separation. What I said was I didn't care about...
Mr. Chairman, was he recognized for this purpose? Is this from your time?
The chair recognizes you make it as brief as you possibly can, and I think you've already said you didn't
I've
say
never
that.
said I didn't care about family
Okay,
separation. What I
that's
said I didn't
sufficient.
care
Let me-
about being sued because I get to give a sworn statement that set the record straight.
Okay. I want to get back to some things here. When you
Mr.
have
Chairman, I'd like
people-
to enter into record this article from Newsweek.
Mr.
Trump's
the
ICE
gentleman's
director
not
doesn't care
recognized. The
about
gentleman's
families
not-
being separated at the border. Thank you.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr. Chairman, is it in order now for me to enter things into the record?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I was trying to enter into the record is the article from Newsweek saying Trump's ICE director doesn't care about families separated at the border. Mr. Homan, the correct quote is, "I'm sick and tired of hearing about family separation. I'm still being sued over that. I don't give a right." Then I'd also like to enter into the record this article saying internal emails show ICE agents struggling to substantiate Trump's lies about immigrants.